Springtime! The snow and ice fade away, and the world wakes up. Plants begin to green up, and the sun shines once again. Flowers peep out, and man and animal are renewed and excited by the season's changes. We know when we see the first robins that soon we'll be back out in the garden. But before the season is in full swing, there are some garden chores that really need to be taken care of. Take a good look around the garden. Look to see what needs to be cleaned up first. If your garden is anything like mine, there's usually a lot of plant debris and other strange things waiting to be cleaned up from last year. Cleaning up the garden can take a lot of time or just a little time depending on the size of your garden. We'll go over a few areas, but let's start with the flower garden first. First, you'll want to remove any dead stuff from last year. This will mostly be annual bedding plants, but also any dead perennial foliage. Make sure that you cut back anything that didn't get cut back last year. And if you're a composter, you can compost everything but the seed heads. Some shrub-like perennials can do with the pruning early in the season because they'll only produce and bloom on new growth. With these plants, you'll want to wait until you see the new growth before pruning. Some of these include the buddleias or butterfly bushes, artemisia, the wormwood family, and the lavenders. Many people like to leave their ornamental grasses standing during the wintertime. They add interest to an otherwise dull season in the garden. If your grass needs trimming, now is the time to cut them back, and you try to get to them before they start growing again. Leaving 6 to 8 inches of old growth is fine. Do wear gloves, though, because some ornamental grasses have very sharp edges. People seem afraid to prune their roses, but don't panic. Most mistakes will grow out just like a bad haircut. Now, while these are not set in stone, here's a few guidelines for pruning your roses. If your roses bloom on old wood, meaning old woody growth, they can be pruned after flowering. If your roses bloom on new growth or new canes, then you'll want to wait until the plant is dormant or just about to break dormancy. Late winter, early spring is a good time for pruning it. In the Midwest, the forsythia is often used as a timing indicator for pruning your roses. If you aren't sure what kind of roses you have, watch them this year to see how, when, and on what kind of canes they bloom on, so you'll know for next year. Also, this is a good time of year to remove any suckers that appear from up around the grafted area around the base of the plant. Now we're going to mosey on over and take a look at some spring blooming trees and shrubs. Most spring blooming trees and shrubs will not need to be pruned until after they've bloomed. The reason for this is because if you prune them before that, you're cutting off all the buds and the blossoms. Generally, you'll want to wait a few weeks after they've bloomed and then go ahead and prune them. That way they'll be ready and will set buds later in the fall for next season. And now it's time for everyone's favorite, lawn care. The first thing you may want to do is to walk around the lawn and check and see if there's any bare spots. If there are, you can go ahead and reseed those now. If you had problems with your lawn last year, something you may want to do is to get a soil sample done. You can contact the local extension office to find out where you can do this. The next thing you might want to do is go ahead and get those mower blades sharpened and make sure that your mower is in good working order this year. Now comes fertilizer. Some people prefer to fertilize in the spring, but an overload of spring fertilizer can cause problems later on. Generally, a heavier dose is recommended for the fall. Instead of fertilizer, you may want to give your lawn some compost. If you use a mulching mower, that will help to feed the lawn too. The next thing that you might want to look for is compaction. Traffic across your lawns causes compaction, and it often creates problems for root growth. On to the vegetable garden. The first things that we're going to do there is to clean out any leftovers from last year. And again, this means plant materials, plant labels, stakes, that kind of thing. We want everything to be ready for when we are ready to plant. Then we will wait until the soil is dry enough to form a ball before we stomp all over it. Otherwise, we really compact the soil. The third thing we're going to do is to add compost or amend the soil. And again, if you had problems last year, you might want to get a soil test to see if there's something that your soil is lacking. Next, break out the seeds. Go ahead and start them indoors now, but don't put anything out just yet. Make sure that you plant after the frost-free date for your area. Around here, it's the middle of May. Some general stuff to do. We can clean out bird houses, make sure they're all clean and ready for nesting birds this year. We can clean off our garden tools to make sure everything's clean and oiled and ready to go. We can mulch around shrubs on the off chance that we have a very dry summer this year. And finally, you can start looking for weeds because they're going to be out early, the spring blooming cool season weeds, and you can start getting those right now. I hope this little presentation has helped you in your gardening endeavors. Now that the sun is shining, it's time to get outside and play in the dirt. Oh, and next time I'll present a lecture on how to remove ground-in soil stains.